Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us for the Digital for Africa webinar. My name is Francis. Today we'll be looking at a conversation about how to attract corporate clients. We'll look at the process of acquiring corporate clients, and why should we even in the first place think about targeting corporate clients. And today I'm very excited because I have a guest who is also a friend of mine. We've done business together since 2017. And I'm very excited because he's someone who I learn a lot from him when interacting with him. His name is Ken Cairo, but also my co-director, Brian Wamiori, is also around. So I'm not alone. I'll be bringing them on in a minute so that we can have this conversation. And as I introduce Ken, let me bring him into the studio. Ken, karibu sana. Brian also, my co-director, is also in the studio. He has joined us. And before we start today's conversation, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker. His name is Mr. Ken Cairo. Ken Cairo is a managing director, Dawit Insurance Limited. He's an inspiration leader with over, I could say, even more than 20 years experience in the insurance industry, because he started way back in the 1997, 1998 there. So this is an expert in insurance and business. And Ken also is a very high achieving businessman, given that he is one of the most decorated insurance experts in Kenya and a thought leader in the area of insurance. He has provided advisory and managerial services, where he gained his experience from different insurance companies, including AIG, Alico, and even Oxfam. So Ken is a passionate entrepreneur, and he has laid a very strong foundation for his company, Dawit Insurance Limited. And of course, Brian also is here with us. Brian is one of the founders and directors of Digital for Africa. He will also be here with me to help me in case there are questions that you guys will be bringing. In case there are questions that you guys will. So first of all, I wanted to appreciate the people who have already joined us. I have seen a number of people have joined us, and once you start this conversation, be free to send in your questions because Ken will be responding to them. Before I start, I'll allow my colleague and my co-director, Brian Wamiori, to say something before we start, but I can see we have Zach Mayul from South Sudan. Zach says he feels good to be here with us. He's joining us from all the way from Juba, South Sudan. So Zach, I'm very excited to see that you've joined us. So before I read more comments, I will allow Brian to say one or two things. He knows Ken as well, and we work together, and there's a lot we want to share today. So Brian, you can go for it.
Thank you so much, Francis. It's always a pleasure to have a conversation with the two of you. I know many times we've conversed behind the scenes, the three of us, about business, about family, about many topics. And today we've gotten a chance to actually converse with everyone as well, and for people to hear what it is that we speak about. I look forward to the conversation. I look forward to also what Ken has for us today. I'm really excited. Asante sana.
Okay, before I usher in Mr. Ken Cairo, the CEO of Dawit Insurance, to tell us his experience servicing corporate companies, corporate brands, blue chip companies, high net worth individuals in Kenya. I also want to acknowledge other people who have joined. I can see Sally Njogu. She joined us some time ago. I can also see Caroline Mwazi, who has also joined us. I can see Salam Cairo, who has also joined us. Thank you guys for joining this conversation. It's a conversation around strategy, business strategy. So Ken, if you're ready, this is an opportunity for you. Myself and Brian will disappear for a minute as you share your experience and your insights. I'm very sure, and I want to assure our audience today, there is something new that you will learn from Mr. Ken Cairo. He's not just an entrepreneur, he's also a leader, very inspirational leader, someone who is obsessed with excellence, is a person who cares about details and perfect execution. Julius Wasonga, thank you very much. I can see you've joined us. Thank you very much. So Ken, you can unmute yourself and go for it.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ken Cairo, and as I have been introduced, I am the CEO at Dawit Insurance, and at Dawit Insurance, we protect business owners' most valuable assets. Obviously, that takes different angles from by different businesses. So as you've heard, our focus is to support business people. And over time, how we got started into the business is actually quite interesting, I must say. It was as a result of an experience that I had. And this experience may not have been the sweetest of all experiences. It is something that happened to me when I was in university. And well, I had an insurance claim. Okay, I had an insurance claim, and technically, what happened is, it was during my I had written my paper, you know, and in those days, once you had your paper on your computer, you didn't bother with the floppy disks. Not everybody in here might understand what a floppy disk is. It's that save sign that you see on your computer. And then what happened is that I had gone to town. I had parked the vehicle in right outside the bank. Then, by the time I was coming out of the bank, I noticed that the vehicle had actually been broken into. It was a station wagon. And being an employee of an insurance company, you know, you say, I will, this is a claim that I will put through. And I did. And unfortunately, my claim became rejected. The insurance company came up with good reasons, I must say. One, they said locked boot clause. I know there are people in the room who understand what that is that anything valuable should be kept in a locked boot. That wasn't the case. It was a station wagon. I mean, really, everything is out there visible. The next thing is that I neglected to mention that that inside that I had parked the vehicle next to a bank. So it was the absence of material information that caused me to suffer the way I did and resulted in me not being able to have that claim paid. And what happened is that it was a very, very painful thing. You know, sometimes people wonder, how comes you do what you do? As a result of the pain of not having my claim paid. And the person who's on that photo with me, that's Selam. We were in college together. We got married. We ran a business together. So she knows the pain, and she has been with me throughout this whole journey. And I thank God for her. So now having that claim declined was very painful. So I went and I told my my employers at the time, I cannot remain in this company if we are not paying claims that are fair and that are documented. Yeah. So that was the journey for me. Now, I think the other thing that is important to note is that sometimes that pain is what triggers you. And that pain triggered me to go and look for opportunities within the corporate space. Okay. And I started doing insurance within that space. And the question of today, which is how do we attract corporate clients, is an interesting question. And I guess the only place I can draw wisdom from is from my personal experiences. It's from what I have seen and what I have done. And therefore, that is the only place where I can bring this. But the thing is this, I know many times we're wondering, okay, corporate clients, why should I be chasing corporate clients and maybe not another group of clients, so to speak? I will suggest to you that if you are doing corporate business, it provides you with acceleration. What that means is that your level of play is different. Okay, the things that your customers will be demanding from you are much higher than when you're interacting on a person-to-person business, okay, or a person-to-person. So when you are playing at the corporate stage, many things happen to you that force you to improve and force you to keep on growing. You know, they will test the systems that you have in place. What else happens is that playing in the corporate space opens you up to new networks. It opens you up to connections. You know, it opens you up to even a stronger financial state, because you know you can continue transacting one person to another at a very small rate. Or alternatively, go for a bigger customer who has a higher impact in revenue generation. So sometimes that might be a motivation for somebody wanting to go and do and chase after corporate clients. So obviously, there's nothing wrong with doing individual business. There's nothing wrong with doing business with smaller micro organizations. But obviously, if you choose to go in that space, it means then that you have the capacity to handle at that level. But if you're looking for acceleration, if you're looking for speed, I would suggest to you that targeting corporate customers is indeed a good idea. Okay. Now, what that did, coming from my place with the motivation that I will not let this happen to anybody I know. I will not let claims remain unpaid, especially if they are genuine, has resulted in, you know, it has completely changed my mind to how I do business. So my approach to business is I do not want anybody to suffer. So I come with care, I come with compassion into the business. And I have been surprised because it's been extremely rewarding as a result. And I just want to tell you that running the business as I have, that approach has led me to be acknowledged by many insurance companies for what it is that we have been able to do. Now, I know Francis had a plan about how we're going to do this. Francis, did you want us to do this in a question-answer scenario, or how is it that you had planned for us to interact?
You can actually go through the slides and finish them, and then we'll bring in the questions later. Okay.
Okay. Good. 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 Thank you, Francis, for that clarification. Okay. So what I am pushing for here is to get us to look and see how far we can go with what it is that we are doing. As I said, acceleration comes because of you interacting with corporate clients. But to be able to win in that sector is very interesting, because the kind of mindset that you get into that space with is very different. I want to show you a few things that I have discovered along the way in terms of what is it that corporate customers are looking for. Indeed, there is an approach which I call a generic approach. Different companies are motivated by different things, and if you're going to play in that space, it's good for you to notice where and how you're going to do this. But this is something interesting from a book that I read by Grant Cardone. He says that the biggest business problem is obscurity. Yeah, I would suggest to you that the reason why you may not be able to attract the large customers that you're chasing after is because they do not know you. And it is important to figure out, how do I get known by those that matter? In my illustration here, it is true that you may have the competency to deliver something at a world-class level. But people are using substitutes, like the guy on the screen using a newspaper to cover himself and protect himself from the rain. People are looking for your service, but they simply cannot locate you. So be comfortable with pushing yourself out there. Be comfortable with looking for networks. And you know, it is true. People want to do business with those that they know, with those that they like, and those that they trust. I don't know who said that, but people do business with people they know, like, and trust. So how do you get known? I think that's an interesting thing. Our host here today, Francis, does a great job, Digital for Africa, in helping people get known in the public with their social media support. That's a good idea. The other thing I would suggest to you is to look into your networks and see whether there is opportunity there. And there's a clever way to get into networking. Networking is a long-term game. First, it is good to be clear about what it is you want from the network. But people don't hear that. People hear, are you interested in me? Also know what it is that you can offer at that networking event or as you seek to network. So that it is not a story of getting, but it is that there is some mutuality where there is an exchange. And when somebody can identify how you can help them in their journey, in turn, being specific about how they can help you in your journey really helps, okay? So even as we're thinking about those things, get yourself known, because if you're not known, how will people buy? How will people come to your shop if nobody knows what it is that you're offering? So it is good to figure out how you communicate about your competencies, okay? And indeed, that is the case. So, like I said, people are looking for you. But for them to be able to connect, they need to see clearly the value that you are offering and how it is going to help them. So I'm thinking, let's broach the subject about the generic ways that cut across all businesses. So whether you're an architect, or whether you're running a retail shop, whether you're running, it doesn't matter what business it is that you're running. There are several things that immediately come to mind. So we ask, what is it that we want from our corporate clients? I'd suggest to you, you are interested in them buying. Buying is good, but it is even better when they come back and purchase again. Yeah? Now, that value of the relationship increases even more when they are able to not only buy, they rebuy, as in they bought again. Yeah? So the basket size is increasing. But there is great value if they can then go out and sing a song on your behalf. Go out and speak to others on your behalf. But how do we get them to do this? Okay? So these are the main customer considerations, the corporate customer considerations, the things that I want you to consider even as we carry the conversation. How do we attract these guys? Okay? So we lead with value. Right? People want guaranteed results. You'll come across a company or an organization or even a decision maker whose primary aim is that their reputation is protected. And that's the reason why sometimes you get introduced, you fumble, and then somebody says, I don't want to relate with this person. There are guys who are very keen on making sure that their reputation is protected. Okay, accurate delivery is another thing within that guaranteed results idea, which I have put there as point one. Then there's another bunch of customers who are driven by the fact that you're giving them relevant information and educating them. Okay, these guys are interested in getting timely information that helps them get ahead of the game. So, for example, if you're a strategist coming in with this mindset and being very strong about it and giving your customers that advantage, they will want to hear from you. Okay. There are others who emotional return of investment is critical. And sometimes I think you've had those customers who say, okay, what is this value add thing that you can do for me that costs me nothing? There's an emotional side to that conversation. Another good one is somebody who's saying, okay, then how will I pay? Can you slice up these payments so that I pay in installments? There is a reason why, and it's coming from somewhere. Okay. And I know people have encountered the situation where customers are asking for, show me evidence that you can do this thing. Okay. Show me that you are a credible person. In that case, they're asking for testimonials. That is some of the things that we should be able to show. At the time when they're doing their due diligence, that they should be able to see these things about you. Okay. If you're a car salesman, for sure, somebody will want to do a test drive. They want to see evidence that this thing actually works. This machine actually does the job that it is been called for to do. And then, of course, there is a situation of being fast, accurate, and on time. There is no point of delivering intelligence or market intelligence after a decision has been made. Okay? So feedback is important. Adherence to what we call turnaround times. Okay? It's very critical that we are able to do this kind of things. That will make sure that the customer feels comfortable. The other thing that I have realized is that guys who just don't want the hassle. They don't want the hassle. And as a matter of fact, they will pay for the hassle. They will pay to remove the hassle from their lives. Hassle-free service. After-sales service. Those are the things that if you can demonstrate after-sales service to this person, then they will be engaged. I am sure you've come across situations where the main thing the customer is saying, oh, this thing is nice. Everything you're telling me is nice. How will you support me after the purchase? Okay? And then, of course, there are people who are keen on what we call world-class quality, you know? And this is another level of people, yeah? They do not want, I mean, this needs to be error-free. Whatever it is that you're delivering is error-free. The quality is of high standard. This item will be durable for long, okay? And then there's somebody else who's thinking competitive prices. I think this is a Kenyan thing, looking at the economy right now. Being competitive in your pricing is very important. And I think I will add being transparent about it. Because, you know, these things called hidden costs, they make people say and encounter buyer's dissonance, where they feel, oh my goodness, I was told this is how much it will cost. But then the reality is that there's another hidden cost and another hidden cost. Surprises. Nobody likes surprises. Okay? Nobody wants to feel cheated or ripped off. So we need to be very clear and open in how we approach our pricing and how we approach those kind of things. Because people want value for money. Make no mistake. Okay? And finally, of course, there is the idea that I want to make money. I want success from this venture. Okay? So how do we demonstrate how they will get that success? How their revenues will increase for example. How their customer base will increase. Their profitability, okay? That you can demonstrate that because of you showing up into their business, their effectiveness has gone that much higher. Okay? So these items fall within what I'd call the generic space. And what I would venture to say is, as we are approaching corporates, let us align ourselves based on our competencies. It is virtually impossible to shine in all these 9 items that I have pointed out here. However, at least 3, if your company can nail it on 3 of these items. And then align yourself to customers whose demands and requirements fall squarely within those 3 items that your company is known for. Then for sure, you will be able to win those big and corporate clients. Okay, so just before I finish, I think it's good for me to share with you a story in reference to one of my first corporate customer. And it's an interesting story in the sense that this was the first corporate customer I ever had. And believe it or not, 20 some years later, I am still serving that customer. Okay, so I walk into this place and I mean, oh my goodness, it was very interesting. I mean, I think about a quote from a movie. We bought a zoo, yeah, and the quote goes like, sometimes all you need is 20 seconds of courage, insane courage, embarrassing bravery. And I promise you that something great will come out of it. And that was my case. That's exactly what happened. I mean, I saw this customer. I thought they fit the profile. I was excited. And every time I wanted to do it, I mean, the fear that comes, I say, what is this? I am going. And from the moment you say hello, and introduce yourself, it only takes 20 seconds. But what's the worst that they'll do? They'll just say no. And in this case, I met somebody who was happy to interact with me and ask me questions. And at the time I was young, and they looked at me and they said, you Kwanza, if we put you in a shot, we can send you to Form 2. What is it that you're telling us that you can do? I mean, I did a beautiful presentation. I mean, with full of enthusiasm. And at the end of the day, you know what they said? They said, go, come back with your manager. If your manager repeats what you have said, i.e., the value you promised to provide, we will give you the job. And I went, came back with my manager, and he sang the song, And this person came back and said, we are giving this young man the job for one reason. Because you're going to supervise him and make sure he doesn't fail. So you can see the connection there to guaranteed results. Okay? So, and that's exactly what happened. Unbeknownst to me, that the person who was offering me the job saw somebody who is trying. They looked and they said, wait a minute, this guy, as young as he is, he's making an effort. So there was some emotional return on investment to reward this person who is making an effort. Okay? And finally, the pricing that I provided for them at that time was extremely competitive. They couldn't say no. So as we are seeking to locate corporate customers, let us lead with value. Let us lead with value. I just hope that story has helped you, and the few things that I have contributed here are valuable. And I would like us now to move into the next stage, where Francis will be opening it up. I know he will want to interrogate me a little bit more. Yes, Francis.
You're very good at presenting and telling a narrative, Mr. Ken Cairo. I've always told you that you have that passion and energy, to add value in a conversation. So I have a few questions before we allow everyone to raise the questions that they have. Brian, you can help me look at our social media platforms. In case there are questions, you can always let me know. I have a few questions that are on top of my mind that I wanted to ask you. And sometimes business leaders, entrepreneurs, we go through a lot of challenges trying to access a decision maker in an organization. For example, maybe you're trying to pitch to a financial institution or a top telco in Kenya. You know the decision maker, but you don't have access to their email. You don't have access to their mobile number. And when you call the office or the secretary, they tell you, oh, the boss is not available, he's not in, but you already know he's in and he's in the office. So what are some of the tactics and strategies that you normally use to get that contact of that decision maker?
Okay, I think there's there are multiple ways, and I guess every situation will call for a different approach. So, for instance, one of the things is to use the word please. Okay, and that comes from a place where you're demonstrating that, first of all, I respect you, gatekeeper, and the function that you play. Okay, and then to show that I have some value that your organization would benefit from. In very brief, and you may not be able to go into the details. That is phase one. Second thing is to figure out if you how other places to find this person, because they operate in other places, not only in the office, and to get their attention in those other places, whether it is through social media, you know, wherever it is that they would be operating from. And thirdly, is don't necessarily go through the traditional route. Honestly, if you're nice, for example, and by the way, the people who have information are not your ordinary guy. It is the tea lady. It is the gate person. It is the driver. It is those people. It's you being warm to them and appreciating the function that they play. Striking a conversation, human to human. And they will connect with you and say, oh, by the way, you're looking for this guy. These are his hours. You know, this is how you can call him. Don't bother looking for him after 9 o'clock. Look for him between 7:30 and 9 o'clock. You know, those are small pieces of intelligence. But really, acknowledging this person who is gatekeeper, and then, believe it or not, being politely persistent. I don't know whether that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense.
Politely persistence. Don't get to the point of being nagging, okay? Lead with intrigue. You know, let them be curious about you, you know, to the point where they say, wait a minute, maybe there's something really interesting here that my boss needs to listen to, okay? I have seen times where even sometimes you already have the contact of the person, but they're not connecting with you. So what you need to look to do or to consider is to do something unorthodox. Yeah. So you'll send somebody an SMS. You'll send somebody my friend, do a small video on your WhatsApp. Talk to him through video and click and send it to him. You know, that person will look at it and say, hi. I mean, you've gone this far. The least I can do is give you 5 minutes, you know? So think outside the box and not just that traditional route. If it really matters, you can go through it, over it, around it, you know, under it, this obstacle, and get what you're looking for.
Wow, that's a great insight. There's also another question I've been thinking around when you're dealing with corporate clients, where a situation is, you're asking yourself as the person who is trying to pitch, in terms of pricing specifically, when you're targeting corporate brands, this is a very thorny issue, and you and I have talked a lot about it. Should I charge less so that I can be competitive and outbid everyone, or should I charge more and and maybe lose a contract and become more expensive than everyone? What's your thinking around price? Because this is something that you really are passionate about. Because I remember you and I have spoken a lot about, in terms of resources or human capital that you allocate. If you have a client paying you, for example, let's say 50,000, and another client is willing to pay you 500,000, the resources that you need for these two types of jobs are more or less the same. So can you tell us more about the issue of pricing? I know you have a lot of experience in this area.
Yeah, well, as I said, all I have to share is my experiences and things that I have learned along the journey. And credit to this one will probably go to Ken Joroge. He has a podcast. You guys, if you're looking for it, there's a Panic podcast. And I listened to him some time back discussing the whole story of pricing, and I thought to myself, wow, that's actually quite interesting. One of the things I remember is that, first of all, okay, when I come into this conversation, I have already carried in my mind how much I probably will pay for your product or service, okay? And many times, if you underprice yourself, it's not my responsibility to correct your pricing. And I think people need to hear that. The customer will take and run. If you underprice yourself, the customer will take and run. They will not correct you when you price in poorly. So the basic level of pricing is your cost plus a reasonable margin. That's basic level, completely basic level, okay? And that's a good place to start, isn't it? But then there is also you remember the value drivers we described? How big is the problem called save my reputation when I'm talking about guaranteed results in my mind as a customer? How big is the problem called delivery on time in my mind as the customer? Okay, so being able to differentiate those challenges that the customer is going through and specifically identify the value in the customer's mind, it helps you to price and now put what we call a value premium on your pricing. Because of this value that I am getting, okay, I will be able to charge. In my mind, it's okay for me to pay so much more. The cost of the hassle. So the value premium. Okay, that's now, so you have now your cost, you have your margin, and then you have the value premium. Okay, and that's good. Now you're in a place where you're making money. But there's also another level where you can creatively communicate and create a story around this thing that resonates with me as a customer. Okay, and then because of that story, I'm willing to pay a little bit more. And those stories live in the space called my aspirations. You know, you mean if I buy this thing, I could potentially perform at this level because it is aligned to my aspirations. How do I connect to those aspirations? Yeah. So I think it's good for us to look at pricing from those 3 or 4 levels. But I repeat, nobody will correct you when you have underpriced yourself. The customer will take and run. Okay, there we go.
It's a great insight, Mr. Ken. There's also this thing that someone says that pricing is also a signaling tool. You know,
yes.
When you put a price, you filter off those types of clients that are not ideal for your service, because there's someone who will always undercut you. I can see Mr. John Katenda, all the way from Uganda, is saying, how do you deal with the undercutting insurers?
Yeah, that's a reality.
John Katenda is a friend of yours who follows you
in the insurance space. In the insurance space. How do I respond to that? First of all, the whole story of undercutting. So it's to properly align yourself in terms of values between yourself and your customer. Okay. And I repeat, there is a vast majority of people who are driven by pricing. So we cannot ignore that, right? However, there is a bunch of customers to whom pricing is not a concern. These are the issues which we discussed, on the slides, whether it is, those are the things that are important to them. So it is to align yourself to find that customer, okay? And then to differentiate yourself and carry the conversation. You remove the conversation from pricing to these other value items. So that, okay, pricing is a consideration, we will not ignore it. However, the reason why you need to pay this is 1, 2, 3, 4. And that 1, 2, 3, 4 needs to resonate with the customer. That's how I would approach it, right?
Okay, that's
Yes.
brilliant. I believe John Katende, all the way from Uganda, Kampala, has gotten your feedback or your response to that. There's a person by the name Morton who says, how do you handle clients who request you for technical and financial proposals, and then they never get back with a regret letter, but just emerge with another request? And this is something that you and I, Ken, we have talked a lot about it, where, you put a lot of time,
effort,
and energy and insights into creating a proposal. But the client will come back and say, I want you to do this other thing first. And you have really offered a lot of value. So how do you respond to Mr. Morton Saulo?
Well, in my mind, Morton, I think there is an opportunity, because I've had a conversation with Francis. How do you explain things to yourself? Okay, so we could go and explain, these guys are users, or we could say these guys just wanted my ideas, and possibly that is true, isn't it? But I think we have a responsibility to our own success and to chase after it. And therefore, a proactive mindset is what I would suggest in this case, i.e., get back to that person who gave you a proposal, who you gave a proposal, okay? If on the RFP, usually they say within what time their buying window is, or whatever the case is, at the end of that period, reach out to them. And if indeed they are the caliber of corporate clients that you're looking for, the opportunity I see is that they will show you how to succeed. They will come back to you and tell you, because of your effort, you came back and asked, how comes I didn't win? That now creates an opportunity for you to attack your next and future customer, because they'll come back and tell you, you did not win because 1, 2, 3, 4. Those things, that insight is insight that you can work on, and that will now open you up to new opportunities, because next time you can play in that customer segment. They have educated you on the things that matter to that customer segment. So for me, Martin, I see an opportunity in that person if we are proactive.
Okay, that's great insight, Mr. Ken. There's another person who has asked, imposter syndrome limits a lot of business leaders from reaching out to corporate clients. And, anyone can suffer from the imposter syndrome, where you feel you are not worth it, or you don't have the capacity. You feel you are not ready. You don't have what it takes. What is your advice to overcoming imposter syndrome? That question has been asked by Mr. Motemi.
Yep, indeed. Caleb, that thing is real, okay? But when you think about it, that whole idea called imposter syndrome, it happens here, okay? So the way I see it, it is the conversations that we have with ourselves. My self-image. And to just be aware of the possibility that on occasion I may talk myself down. but make sure that that is only maybe 10% of the time. And the rest of the time, the conversation that you're having with yourself is an uplifting and possibilities conversation. Because the truth is, growth happens right outside of your comfort zone. So there's some stretching required. Everybody is stretching. It's not easy. There is the pain, there is a struggle of that stretch, but then that's the reward when you succeed. So there is also that training of managing yourself with that whole imposter syndrome and telling yourself, wait, let's see, there could be something here, I could grow here. Yeah. So I think just carrying those positive conversations that allow you to step up, and just being aware that from time to time, obviously, I will feel low and I will feel down. I will feel that imposter syndrome, but to arrest it before it paralyzes you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ken. I would also ask a question from Caroline Mwazi, who actually has two questions. One, how do you get the intel from that corporate client that you are targeting? Do you research, and where do you get these types of insights? And also, Caroline is also asking a second part of her question, especially with competitors. You have competitors also who are also trying to undercut you in one way or another, whether it is price or something. So how do you deal with that issue of lack of information? You want an insight, you want a deeper understanding of the business, the challenges they are going through. How do you know about that?
Okay. Caroline, I would probably have two answers there. Because the whole idea of getting intelligence about customers is how creative you can get, okay? Is how creative you can get. I mean, we could check them out on LinkedIn and to see whether there are connections that you have a good relationship with, that have a good relationship with them, isn't it? And use your network to learn a little bit more about them. They say Google is your friend. Eh? Obviously, there are things that you will learn from them. There are things that you will learn about from what they post. It'll show you how they think. And maybe that's useful information, and who they relate with, for example, what their interests are. So that intel comes from many sources. It comes from that person's work colleagues. It comes from what is in the public space. It comes from even just directly, smartly, I wouldn't say interrogating, I'm looking for the proper word, but in conversation with that person, but listening and asking open-ended questions. Because when you ask open-ended questions, they will share what's inside. Don't ask questions that result in a yes or no. Because that keeps the person closed, Yeah. Like if you ask a person, how did you start this business? What caused you to start this business? My goodness, the intelligence you will get from that response. I'm sure right now you feel me when I shared with you how I started my business and the pain that caused me, or the irritation, frustration that caused me to start the business. Okay, so I think that is one of the things that you would look at. Secondly, the question about competition. Many people have a different approach. Many people have a different approach. One of the things I laugh at is because I enjoy swimming. So when I'm in the swimming pool, the guy next to me on the lane, we're in competition. As akin to the Subaru drivers, no pun intended. But really, sometimes looking at the competition slows you down. It really does slow you down. You must, if you're looking at the competition, look at the competition from an from a co-opetition mindset. Okay, what is it that I can build together with my competition? That's how I do it. And by the way, I relate with my competition in very cordial ways. There are things we have built together with my competition,
Wow.
and that has worked very well for me. So I don't look at my competition as enemies or as people who need to be crushed, or that ends up being a zero-sum game. But if you look at it from, this is my competition and there is something they can contribute to my success and me theirs, that conversation changes completely. The conversation changes completely. Yeah. There are people who, because of the customer segments I serve, somebody will come to me needing me to provide them a service, and that is not in my quote unquote interest areas. I will go to my competition and give them that business and help them see that that business gets closed and they get rewarded for it, and that creates an affinity. So with your competition, look for a way to create an affinity with them. You won't be surprised the kind of learning, the kind of encouragement and camaraderie that comes once you open yourself up to building with competition.
Okay. Ken, thank you very much for that insight. There are more questions that have come. I don't know that I'll be able to answer all of them because we now have about 9 minutes before we finish. But I wanted to ask you, Ken, before I can read the question from Victoria Nungo, who is a friend of mine. Which are some of you and I are obsessed with the digital tools, the digitization of sales and marketing and the tracking of all that. Which are some of your favorite digital tools that you can say as a business leader you have been able to use this tool and you find a lot of value? Because a lot of tools don't offer everything that they promise, and no one tool will give you everything that you expect. So is there a tool that you want to talk about that you feel, wow, without this tool, Dawit Insurance will not be where we are today? Could be one or two.
Okay.
A couple.
Okay.
Which is one of your favorites?
So for me, a tool is to help me get the job done. I feel like we big naughty here and say sometimes when customers come to us, the things that they ask us for, we should be very clear about the job that they want it to do. So sometimes, for example, if you have a salon, that person doesn't want to look beautiful. The tool, what they're probably looking for is to make that ex feel jealous about what they have missed.
Wow.
Since you left, I look better, kind of thing. Anyway, sorry. It just crossed my mind. But nonetheless, so I have a tool that helps me. It's a broker management system, okay? Just to help me manage my interactions with my customers in reference to their documentation and how I interact with the insurance companies. So that's one. Two, I have a tool that helps me manage my relationships with my customers. I have a CRM that I use to help me manage those relationships, make sure that things are happening, that we are tracking on customer expectations, we are tracking on, even if somebody went on leave, the things that were on their table for them to do actually get done, to help us be smart even with the workflows that we have, to make sure that every item that needs to be done sequentially is done. And then, of course, finally, we have a tool that helps us to get things done within the business. This is not a customer-related item. It's just to help us manage the specific things that we said we will do and to see them get done. Okay. So the tool is Asana. That's one of the tools that we use, and that's an internal tool for the team. We use HubSpot for the customer management. And then, of course, we have our broker management system. And those are useful tools for my business. So what is it that you want it to do for you? So don't just get a tool, my opinion, until you're very clear about what you want it to do for you.
Thank you very much, Ken. I want to ask a question from Victoria Nungo, who says, what if I'm following up on a business deal with an employee, maybe not a very senior decision maker, then along the way, I get the contacts of the main decision maker. How do I shift my negotiations from that junior level person to the decision makers? And I know this is something maybe, Ken, you have gone through. You've been talking to someone at a certain level, and then along that process, you
realize you're backing up the wrong
tree. Exactly. So how do you, because this person you will leave, they'll feel, wow, you have just left me and I'm the one who started with you, you know? How do you respond to Victoria?
Yeah. Victoria, I would suggest to you that the approach here would be enrollment, okay? Enroll them to the idea that first, I appreciate the value and the journey that we have walked together, okay? And then I need you to help me close on the real decision maker so that they are still useful within this conversation. Because you see, you're working with a human being, okay? And we relate, and you want that relationship to remain, because once the decision has been made, you may be very well discover that they are the users of the product that you're pushing, okay? So they may not be the ultimate decision makers. However, they contribute in influencing whether you stay in that business, okay? So I would enroll them and show them that they are still relevant, and this is how they can help me to close on the deal, okay? So don't chuck them out and say, yeah, now I know the real person. I don't need you. Bye-bye. No. That's not the approach. That's not the approach. Yeah. Francis, I think you're muted.
Sorry. There's a question from Jane. Jane says, which is the best source of checking market prices when quoting for a service for the first time? Maybe you're dealing with someone you've never dealt with before, and you're asking, and Jane is asking, where do I get, is there a structure? Is there a process? Or how do I get, the price? How do I put that quotation together? How do I get that kind of an insight?
Jen, that's a big one, and I don't know whether there's any straight response to this. Because figuring out what the market price, I mean, Jane, everybody is not your customer. So we need to narrow down when we are relating with our customers and say, to this customer, what is the size of the problem I am fixing for them? And figure out how to quantify that in value, in cash, what that problem is that you're solving for them. And at a minimum, charge 10% the value of that problem that you're solving for them. That sounds very abstract. But and you see, in this forum, we can possibly just respond in a very generic way. But you see, what you're asking might need an in-depth interaction to know what the business is, and other factors to consider while thinking through the pricing. But that's just a very high-level opinion on how to approach pricing. Jin, I hope that's useful.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I think Caroline has asked a question about LinkedIn. How do we smartly leverage on LinkedIn to generate corporate sales? I know LinkedIn has a LinkedIn Premium that can allow you to do more. But what has been your experience? Have you ever gotten a client from LinkedIn that converted? Have you been using LinkedIn yourself at Dawit Insurance?
Yes, I have gotten both customers and employees, believe it, from LinkedIn. One of my employees the other day came to me and said, do you know when I first interested myself to come and work in your company? You owe me 2 years of work experience. because they first approached me on LinkedIn, and I only got them on board a few years ago. So in their minds, that was a whole 2-year waiting period. And I think the moral of that story is the interaction on LinkedIn is not I meet you today and you buy today. There is nurturing that needs to happen. Nurturing happens when our interests are aligned. Okay. So LinkedIn is a good source to know people. LinkedIn is a good source, but it doesn't happen overnight. Yeah. So there is a nurturing process, and there is something that helps me see that there is value that you're bringing to me that I need. And from what I am seeing, I am certain that you are competent, that you have the ability to deliver, you know. So that's something I thought to mention on LinkedIn. But I am not the end all and be all Jin in these things. Our host, Francis, is very good on that side because it falls within his domain of social media, so to speak. So I think he would have a lot more to contribute in that regard.
Okay. There is a question, Ken, from John, who says, how do you deal with people who are asking for a kickback? You know, and yet your margins are very slim. I know this is something that we have experienced at Digital for Africa. You know, someone says, well, the quotation is 500, niongezeka 50 hapo, so quote 550. You know, how do you deal with those kinds of clients?
Okay, I mean, for me, that's a very straightforward, easy response. Okay, because I'm very clear that I earn my keep. Okay, and I don't carry the conversation of kickbacks from a values standpoint. And this is how sometimes you end up choosing the customers that you want to work with. For me, one of those things, I mean, we need to be aligned in that regard, okay? I want, when I don't perform on the job, that you come and tell me you did not perform and here, on this point, on that point, and on that point. And that is the reason why we're taking away the contract from you. Because once you have kickbacks and all those other things that happen, it is very difficult for somebody to come back and tell you you're not performing here, there, and there. So you end up being sloppy and sloppy and sloppy until they completely can't stand you. And as you're being sloppy, you're losing out on other opportunities that require you to play at a high level. So for me, the whole conversation of kickbacks and what have you, it's never been an issue. I don't give kickbacks, and if you insist on a kickback, you're not my customer. But it's a hard thing. It's difficult. A lot of people will struggle with it. But I think it's just a conversation you just need to have with yourself and decide, is this something I want to do? And then if you don't, then, but if you choose to do it, then, well, I guess we're different. I can only share from my experience and how I see the world in that regard.
I think also my experience, Ken, is I don't, or we don't, we have a policy where we don't give clients kickbacks. And we, in terms of even policy, we don't even want to service a client who is asking for kickbacks. I remember, was it last year before the elections? Someone reached out to us and they said, it's a very big political party. And you know how toxic that area is. They wanted us to do a website and we just told them we are not interested because we know politics comes with a lot of risks. And when you're dealing with a corporate entity, that's a different thing. But when you're dealing with an individual who is asking for something in return for this favor, you know, you really will face a lot of challenges from that person because they can at some point say, I'm tired of you guys, you have to leave, and that kind of a thing. So there's another question, Ken, that has come in from Ronald Okumu. He says, how do I ensure, how can I tell alignment of my proposition to the corporate business objectives? Maybe he's talking about, I have my proposal, I'm creating a proposal. How do I ensure I'm able to address the needs of that business when I'm putting the proposal together?
Ronald, I hope that your approach involves engaging the customer. Okay, because if you engage them, you will learn some of these things, the said and unsaid, the documented and the undocumented things that they would want to see done. And so I think that whole conversation about alignment has a lot to do with how you engage with your customers. And obviously, just doing some research about the organization and how have they made their past decisions, where are they taking the business, what are the challenges that they are currently facing, you know, what is that thing which is so uncomfortable for them that they're willing to pay a premium, you know, to have resolved. So engagement, and obviously how you ask the questions. I repeat, open questions are very good kind of questions, and also to figure out and figure out the implications of this leaving the matter unattended. So that by the time you're providing your solution, they're thinking, okay, so this is what I get once the situation has been resolved by Ronald. Okay, I'm engaged. So engaging your customers is a big deal. I think that's where that's where you get it. And really, it involves a lot of follow-up. It could involve a lot of interactions to get it accurate and sharp. Ronald will tell you the fortune is in the follow-up.
Yeah, and I think also I can add that something there, Ken. Recently, we got one of the leading law firms coming to Digital for Africa looking for web design and search engine optimization services. And the question we just alluding to what you're saying about engagement and interacting with the customer and asking the right type of questions. One of the things we normally ask all our clients when they reach out to us, even if they don't convert, how did you learn about us? Why are you reaching out to us? Why have you decided to do business with us? And when we asked them that question, they told us, you know what? We have actually been mistreated, or we got a very raw deal from another competitor. We don't want to mention them. We have been shortchanged by someone else. So that's why we are coming to you. So if you ask a question, the right type of question, you'll get the right type of feedback. If you ask a question about how did you learn about us, why did you choose us, I think that's a very interesting thing that can really elicit a lot of actionable insight that can help you now to know, oh, so this is a company who actually had been mistreated by another agency, and we can deliver a better experience by being more, like for us, what we do is we meet with all our clients every week. You and I can, you know, the number of times we meet to just reevaluate what are we doing, what is working, what's not working. We agreed this to be done last week. Has it been done? Why has it not been done? Who's responsible? That kind of collaboration between an agency or a company or a service provider and the corporate brand is very, very important. That's where the value is. Instead of waiting for a month, that's when you're coming back with a solution or an answer. A lot of things will have happened within 4 weeks, you know, and definitely you will not meet the client expectation. But when you're meeting with the client on a weekly basis, you're able to review and see. And Ken, you didn't say something that I really like about your business and how you have positioned yourself. Your tagline, your company tagline, and how it came about. Can you tell us a little bit about that before we wind up? You know, you embed yourself within a company. You're like an insurance department within any client that you service. Tell us about your tagline and how you got it. Where did you get it?
The Dawit Insurance tagline is your insurance department. And the reason basically is And actually that came from customer feedback, where my competition approached my customer, but they were a value customer, those customers who you never want to lose. And they were much bigger. The competition was much bigger. Who they were much bigger. They had resources. They had, oh my goodness, we didn't stand a chance to remain relevant. And what happened is, because of the level of play, being there, being supportive, informing the customer, whenever they needed us, and the customer turned around and told this my competition. They told them, by the way, in our company we have an insurance consultant. Okay, he serves as our insurance department. So now you go tell him everything you think we need to hear. If he thinks it is relevant, he will come and tell us, and we will take action. And that's how my competition was shooed away from the room. They didn't call me, but when I went for the meeting, thereafter they told me, oh, but these guys are here. And we told them, you are our insurance department. And we quickly adopted that and made it our tagline. Because one of the things that we seek to do is, particularly when it comes to claims, I say that your obligation is to tell us you have a claim. And thereafter, we will hold your hand throughout the claim process and support you with the questions around documentation. We will train you that when you have a claim, this is the insurance company expectation. The absence of document 1, 2 will delay the process, So can we do this even before we ever had a claim? Because when we have a claim, we don't want to waste time dealing with this situation or dealing with these things. So we equip, we educate our customers, and we help them see and also make sure that the insurance companies are reasonable in the demands and expectations that they have on our customers at claims point. Okay, so that has given us quite a bit of leverage to be able to do so. So we support a lot of companies. We are able to help them to deal with their employee-related matters. Sometimes people are struggling. Again, I go back to my value conversation. Sometimes people are struggling with employee retention. Employee retention is a big deal, and it costs a lot of money from a HR standpoint. But how can I provide them? How can I help them save the talent and keep the talent within the organization? And sometimes the solutions exist in insurance, and that is where I come in and support them. We take care of people who have massive assets, whether it's buildings or factories, and expensive machines, and we help them to insure those properly. We don't only look at the insurance side of things, but we carry conversations around how do we prevent loss from happening in the first place. Okay, so now that's a different conversation, because we're no longer talking about insurance per se, but we're thinking about safety of the workplace. We're thinking about prevention. It changes the conversation, and that customers appreciate as value, And the insurance company, on the other hand, realizes that this is such a good customer. When they have a claim, this is the kind of customer you respond to quickly, because they have done everything they know to do to avoid the claim from happening. Let's not waste their time. Let's pay this claim quickly. Kind of support that we give to our customers.
Okay, thank you very much, Ken, for coming for this webinar. Remember, we normally have this webinar every month. We talk about sales, we talk about digital advertising, we talk about marketing and content creation, we talk about tools. And I don't know whether my co-director, Brian, wanted to say anything that I may have left behind. Brian, I'll give you the floor to just say a word of thank you to our participants, and we appreciate all of you. Thank you so much, Peter Letoya. We saw you join. Thank you, Ethnic Mutinda, for joining. And I believe That's a beautiful thing. So, Brian, do you want to say something as we wind up and say a word of thank you to everyone who has joined us today?
Thank you, Francis. I think as you mentioned in the beginning, that we'll definitely learn something from Ken. It's not once or twice or thrice that we've conversed or interacted with Ken, but at the end of the day, going through or rather listening him speak, I've also been able to come up with something that I'm taking away from this webinar. So asante sana, Ken. It is always a delight interacting with you and learning from you. And you are among the clients that we really cherish because we get to become better just by working with you. So asante sana, and be blessed. Just to tell our audience that Ken runs David Insurance, and if you wanted to find out more about him and his business, you can visit davidinsurance.co.ke or just search for David Insurance using any search engine. You'll be able to see their website. You can see some of their services. They also have a YouTube channel called Espresso Chat that has very rich content. So some of the things that Ken is saying, you'll be able to see also on that YouTube channel called Espresso Chat. It's very rich, and also sooner than later, you'll be seeing Francis and other familiar faces in the same YouTube channel. So asanteni sana to all our audience. It's always a delight to interact with you and get to answer some of your questions, get to enrich each other in one way or the other. And I look forward to next month's conversation. We'll be sharing the topic sooner than later. So thank you so much. Have a lovely night. I know some of us, or some of you rather, need to go and fulfill some tasks within your families, and will not keep you any longer. Just to mention to the audience as well, to our participants, that the recording to the entire webinar will be available on YouTube. So if you go to our Digital for Africa channel, you'll be able to find the webinar there, or the link to the webinar, the recording to the webinar there. So thank you so much. Have a lovely night. That's it from me.